Today, we are going to be talking about genetics in strongmen. Are you cut out for it, or are you destined to be an average lifter? I've put this into 7 different categories of uncontrollable factors you can't train your way out of, and some people are just happen to be very lucky, and some people not so much. So to get right into it, number 1 is going to be cross-sectional area of the muscle. Muscles are really interesting where they don't actually matter how big they are, they matter how thick they are. I'm sure you've heard that before. If you have a shorter humerus, your bicep, say it shortens, is naturally going to be thicker at resting length. That means it will be more powerful. The simplest way to think of this is your muscles are designed like so. When they contract, they pull into each other, and when they relax, they let themselves go. Now, a muscle is basically this interaction over and over and over and over again. The thicker that muscle becomes, the more of those interactions, therefore the more force that muscle can produce. Unfortunately, we are basically destined to our genetics when it comes to our muscle thickness in their resting state. This is definitely a trainable quality, but someone who naturally exists with thicker muscle bellies will tend to be stronger than someone who exists with naturally longer and thinner muscle bellies. Next is your muscle insertion. So remember, muscles act on a joint to produce force. The way that they act on the joint is they cross the joint, and in the case of the bicep, it pulls on your forearm to bring it up to your shoulder. The interesting thing is we're not dealing with the force of the muscle, we're dealing with the moments that it can create. This means that it's determined by 2 things. 1, how much force it can produce, but 2, how much force it's actually exerting on the joint, or how far away it is. It's as simple as, with this laptop, if this is the bicep attachment, this is the elbow, and it pulls here, it's quite easy to close that. If I push down here, I need to put a lot more force in to get the same motion. We do not control where our muscles are inserted. If it's inserted further away, you're naturally going to be much stronger. Your pec attaches on your humerus, say it's slightly further away from the joint, you'll be able to rep out the bench even though you don't look strong, you don't look muscular, you're just naturally going to exist that way. Now, interesting to note here, notice what happens. If I push here, it's easy but slow. If I push here, it's hard but fast. This could tend to a more explosive athlete at lighter weights, if we're down here, who hits an absolute wall when it gets to heavier weights, when you need something that has a bit more leverage. Next is going to be your natural resting muscle lengths. Now, this is not the same conversation as the cross-sectional area of the muscle. This is more to do with how mobile are you in general. This is something that, again, is trainable, but is hard to out-train your genetics. Let's say you're someone who naturally can get their hand 20 degrees behind their head. It's going to be hard to be super stable up there because now you have a greater responsibility to have muscular control over a very large range of motion. So being able to control is going to be very difficult, which brings me to number 4. Number 4 is the natural structure of your joints. There's a continuum with both muscle and with joints that's stability on one side and mobility on the other side. You will not often see, I don't know of anyone, who was a phenomenal gymnast who became a phenomenal strongman. The reason being, their joints, to be a great gymnast, are going to have to be very shallow and much looser. As a strongman, a deep, stable joint is going to be what we need. The hip is the easiest way to conceptualize this. If the hip socket is shallow, we've got a lot of movement. But if you hold a very, very heavy farmer's handle, it's going to tend to subluxe much easier than a joint, we're talking about the hip. If it's very shallow, let's say you go into a squat and you only need to squat 2 boxes. If you have all this freedom and you could squat 20 degrees further down than the boxes, you create an arbitrary end range for yourself. And it's almost the reason that a 3/4 squat is harder than a full squat where you get no bounce out of the hole. Okay? Now, strongman, if you get that right in the hip capsule, it's going to be strong on yoke, it's going to be strong on farmers, and it's going to give you the mobility that you need, but not anything in excess of the mobility you need. Number 5 is your height. There are simply certain strongman events where it's better to be shorter, and there's certain events where it's better to be taller. In a perfect world, you are 1, not too short or too tall. Or 2, you are tall and so strong that it doesn't matter, i.e. Hathor Bjornsson. Well done, mate. But power stairs, great example. If you're tall, naturally you're just going to be able to place it on the stair, and if you're super short, you won't be able to get it. Atlas stones, exact same thing. A tall guy might extend here and be done. A short guy might have it on his chest and his neck, and he still has to try to push it up onto the platform. Obviously, this is not a trainable quality, but very important that you recognize if you don't exist somewhere between, say, 5'8" and 6'9", you're probably going to have a difficult time to be high level on every event. Not to say you can't get to the pro level, but you will run across events and implements that are just not to your benefit. Number 6 is your relative limb lengths. Now I say this relative, I mean relative to yourself. How long are your arms relative to your legs? How long is your femur relative to your tibia? All of these things are going to create situations in which you could be a better squatter, or you could deadlift differently, or you could have to press a weight through the roof. And all of these variables are going to be significantly determinants of how much you're capable of doing. If you have a short humerus, when you lock out that log, you might not have to go far. Long humerus, you got to go much, much further. Okay. In the end, someone with a short humerus is always going to have an advantage over someone with a long humerus in that example. Lastly, and potentially one of the most important, is your natural body weight. If you're someone who naturally exists as a larger framed, more muscular person, you're going to put yourself in good stead to be able to build off of that base. But if you're someone who exists at 150 pounds, 140 pounds, it's harder for you to put on weight. It is going to be very, very challenging for you to out-eat your body weight. In this case, you're probably best staying in a lighter class strongman and being the best that you can for that body weight and for that frame that you have. For all of these, it's very important to have accurate self-assessment and say, this is what I'm probably going to be able to do, and this is what I'm probably not going to be able to do as well. So if you're shorter and you're going to stones, okay, you know you have to work on your extension a lot, or you got to work on your upright row for your power stairs, or your lean back for the power stairs. Or if you're going to be longer overhead, you got to work heaps on your triceps to make sure that that power is there, or find a way to get under the log or the implement. Those are my 7 tips. Let me know what you think. How much do you think genetics play a role in strongman capability? Let me know. Leave a moose dropping. If you can, subscribe to the channel. And I would love it if you would become a member and support more content like this getting made. Thank you very much, guys. And we'll catch you next time. Lift heavy, be kind.